My vocation really struck me when I was 16. Prior to that, it was been a bit of a curiosity. My dad was a priest, and so faith had always been part and parcel of our life and family life. But this particular year, I went to Lyon for the first time on my own without parents. And we'd always taken a guy called George, who was a guy in a wheelchair with MS, and quite later stages of MS. But prior to being struck with that illness, he was going to be ordained himself as a Latvian Orthodox priest. So this particular year I took more of an involvement in George's care. And it was a particularly painful year for George. He was dropped slightly out of the aeroplane on the way. His food had got damaged en route. And particularly we didn't think we'd get him home alive actually, because it was that bad. But we concentrated more on the spiritual aspect of his life and ministry out there. George was someone who actually offered the illness as an intercessory prayer. And so for him, the key was to be sitting in front of the grotto, praying for those people that we'd given him to pray for. And so it was very much caring for him and enabling him to carry out his ministry within the Church of God. And I suppose that, on reflection, when I got home and after the drama of the week, really hit home that actually the priesthood isn't just in the sanctuary, which it is, but it's not. But it is about enabling the gifts of everyone in order to fulfil their ministry within the life of the church. So it was at that moment, on reflection of that week, that actually, for the first time, I actually realised that I had a call to the priesthood. But also at that time, I was starting a college course for computing, and I didn't want to take it further. You know, I wanted to do something else first. And so a couple of years after taking George, when he was 16, I also ended up in a wheelchair and had to be cared for. And so very much was the ministry of other people caring for me, which was an important part of actually learning from the gifts of other people how we can be served and how priests are actually strengthened in their ministry by the care and support of others. And so actually sitting next to George in wheelchairs, not being able to move, was an important aspect of highlighting that part of the priest's ministry. So even after going to Lyon in a wheelchair, I still didn't feel right that I continue down the path of ordination yet. I'd just started my career in teaching at Chichester College, teaching computing. But I suppose a few years into that, when I was about 22, I took a pilgrimage to Lyon. And while on that pilgrimage, we had some seminarians from the Roman Catholic Church, and they were just about to be ordained deacon, and they were given a signed autobiography of St. Therese of Lisieux by the group as a sort of ordination present. At the same time they were given that, I was given one as well, even though I had said nothing to them about, you know, this sort of vocation of calling. And I suppose it hit home then again that actually this is another prompt, you've got to take it further. And then I suppose, you know, it was 6 months after that that I then began in the sort of diocesan level of going through to ordination training. So when I finally made that decision that actually ordination was right for me, and it was what I was being called to, I couldn't really have Dad as my parish priest and sponsor, so I decided to go off to another church and become part of that family and community. And so for me, that sort of official process was a bit longer because I was joining another community. But looking back on that time, that was equally important. It couldn't have been shorter, and a great part and parcel of my actual whole journey. For those thinking of ordination, I would say definitely speak to someone. It is important that you have someone who you can talk these things through, even if it's in the early stages. For me, I had my family, which was very supportive. My dad was a priest, etc. But if you don't have that, I think it is important that you have someone a spiritual director or someone like that, that you can actually talk these things through and actually try and gain as much experience along the way, because that's always important.